Janice. Janice Bell is a retired Spanish and French teacher. She's also an Alzheimer's lifestyle coach, and she teaches our I'll Take Romance 2 classes on Monday mornings. She's joining us this morning from her home there in Alvin. And Janice, can you tell us what fostered your love of languages?
Well, I was in 6th grade or thereabouts when Sputnik was launched from Russia. And of course, then we suddenly realized we were behind. And so the government started pushing math, science, and foreign language in education. And so my school started after school, optional after school classes in French, because I lived in Pennsylvania at the time when we were here in Canada. So I got to take French and I just fell in love with it. And, you know, and ever since then, I have wanted to try. It took me probably 25 years before I ever made it to France. I didn't get to go right away, but I fell in love with language, just the beauty of it together. And then in 8th grade, I learned diagramming, and that just reinforced it. So,
yeah. Very good.
So that's how it all started.
Started with an after-school program for learning French then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I studied it. I got to study it after school in 6th, and then I got to take classes in it in 7th and 8th grade. Then, fortunately, I made it through 8th grade. Then we moved back to Texas, and but I was in 9th, so I could take it all the way through high school and through university. Actually, I started in 3rd year level at university when I was a freshman, because I'd had so much background in it. And my bachelor's is in French, but living in Texas, I realized Spanish was also quite important. So I picked up Spanish along the way, even studied a year of Russian in college, and then changed schools. I didn't have enough. So
you have some Russian in your repertoire also. Janice, are you Czech by any chance?
Nope, I'm just about as Anglo as they come.
Okay.
Noble and Sullivan and Smith and Greeley, you know.
I was just wondering, because so many people in our area speak a little Czech, and that surprised me.
Yeah, I wish. Then I would know some German, but I don't.
Yeah. No German at all. Did you retire from a school system?
I spent 30 years. I came to Alvin. That's how I ended up in Alvin, which was one of your questions. I came to teach Spanish because secondary education, you had to have a double major. So my bachelor's is in French, but my second major was in Spanish. And so I came to Alvin High School to teach Spanish, and I taught it for 30 years there. But actually, when the French teacher left, then I got to teach French also. Sometimes one, sometimes the other, and sometimes both. Those were fun years.
I bet so. So did you find yourself mixing in Spanish and French words together after so many years of teaching Spanish?
Not really, except for the year I had a Spanish class and then a French class right after it. And I just have to literally turn around and tell myself, ahora hablo español, or maintenant je parle français. Okay, I had to tell myself orally out loud when I had to hear it, that which language I was to speak. And sometimes I'd start something and I get these blank stares and I said, am I speaking the wrong language? And they said, uh-huh. But the most fun class I ever taught was to keep them from dropping upper level languages. And I said, I will teach your French. It was the year they switched me, if you let me keep my Spanish 3 and 4. I had French 3 and Spanish 3 in the same class, in the same hour. Wow. But I had the language lab right next door to me. So I'd send one language to the lab and get them working on lab stuff. And then I'd work with the other one, and I switched off day to day. But I had some games that they could compete in their own language against each other. And that was a lot of fun.
That sounds like it. You mentioned the language lab. Was it the reel-to-reel tapes?
When I started at Alvin High School, it was. Every student position had a little reel-to-reel tape recorder. And then later they changed them out to cassette decks. And that's as advanced as we got until they took out the lab altogether, which really disappointed me. But because I mean, when I started studying Spanish at UT Austin, we were assigned to go to lab. We could keep our own hours but it was very apparent immediately who went to lab and who didn't, because those who went to lab made a lot better progress.
So do schools still have language labs, or have they been replaced by apps on telephones or something now?
Most likely now. I haven't been in one in a long time. I taught my 30 years in Alvin, and then I retired for a week. And then I went to A&M Galveston and taught half-time there for 12 more years.
Wow.
But A&M Galveston did not have a language lab, but they are a marine sciences campus. So, you know, language was just because it was one of the requirements for a degree. So, which I think they have dropped altogether now. And they said, you know, you can get it at Galveston College or something. But
did you say living in Alvin while you were teaching in Galveston also?
Yes, yes.
You didn't.
It wasn't a bad commute. I always said I'd never commute, but it wasn't. I mean, I went across 517 and it was smooth sailing all the way to campus.
Very good.
Because you know, the A&M Galveston campus is on Pelican Island. And so you don't go into town really at all. And so
I see. Now, your love for travel is very apparent when you teach. Where were you living before you moved to Alvin?
Okie dokie. Well, I was born in Oklahoma, and then when my dad graduated from college on the GI Bill, we moved to Louisiana because that's where Gulf Oil Company started their rookie engineers, was down on the Mississippi Delta. We're talking Jackson Bend on the Mississippi River, 50 miles south of New Orleans. But anyhow, we were in there, and then once he made it to the office level of engineers, we were moved to Houston. And but Gulf didn't believe in anyone staying in one place very long. And so we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and back to Houston. And then Daddy started traveling. And so he was on a pipeline project in Atlanta. So we'd spend summers in Atlanta, but Mom wasn't a transfer. So we kept the house, and Mom got us through the school year, but we spent summers with Dad in Atlanta. And then I spent a couple of other summers with my uncle in Nebraska. And so been around. When I got married.
Military family with that, all of that moving around. So, and you ended up settling in Alvin because of the offer that you got from the school.
Yeah, because of the teaching job. Mm-hmm.
And your husband was fine with, you know.
Well, the different husband. But he was working in Houston when we married, and I said, well, you know, there's no sense in both of us commuting. So we, you know, because I said, number one, my son is not going to school in Houston. So you can either move to Alvin or we can find someplace in Clear Lake or wherever. And I said, but there's no use in us both commuting. So I got him down here in a rent house for a year, and he decided it wasn't such a bad place after all. So we stayed. We bought a house and stayed.
Yes, it's a very different town.
Yes. Oh yeah, it was a very much small town then. It still kind of is, but not quite as much.
In our classes, you've talked about some of the road trips that you've made. Can you tell us about some of your favorite places that you've been in the U.S.?
Okay. U.S. road trips, Wayne and I did one. We have family reunions at the farm in Nebraska ever so often. And so post-reunion one time, we went and did the Badlands National Park. Actually, it wasn't even on our itinerary, but I saw the sign and said, we can't just drive past a national park. So we did the Badlands, and I loved it. It was delightful. And then we did Mount Rushmore. That was where we were headed. Mount Rushmore and Crazy Horse, and then on out to Devil's Tower, which had been on my bucket list ever since I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Y'all remember that movie?
Oh yeah.
And I had to see Devil's Tower, and it was mesmerizing. I mean, you could hike completely around the thing, and your eyes were glued to it all the way around. It was just, there's something kind of extraterrestrial about it. It didn't come before. I know what it is geologically. One thing that surprised me about it is they allow rock climbers to go up it. They just have to register so they know how many people are out there. But I was amazed that they allowed rock climbing on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was a good trip. And then my favorite road trips have been with my younger brother. I have two brothers, both of them younger, but the one that's 6 years younger and I, we're good traveling companions. And we've taken 3 road trips together, just the two of us. Our first one, the ultimate goal, now we freestyle. I love it. We make no reservations. We have a destination in mind, but anything between here and there is fair game. He sees something he wants to see, we stop and see it, and vice versa. So our Grand Canyon trip, we went through Monument Valley. We got sidetracked by Ship Rock because it was interesting to follow the volcanic tubes and whatever. Then we went to Four Corners, hokey, but you gotta do it. There's just something cool about being in 4 states at once. But when we went to Four Corners, we'd gone up one highway, we stayed so long at Ship Rock, they were closed. And we saw this sign, Hoven Week. We went to another way to find a place to stay overnight so we could go back the next morning. Saw a sign, Hoven Week. And so coming back, we thought, okay, we'll just cut the corner. We saw it on both roads, we cut the corner and see what this Hoven Week thing is. Well, it was not a shortcut. but it turned out it's a small national park, and there are about 7 examples of Puebloan ruins in this little park, and you can hike the rim of the little canyon. There was snow on the ground. We always go in December, January, because it's when we were both off, Mm-hmm. And so we discovered Hoven Week, and then we went on to the Grand Canyon, and then Lake Havasu City to see the London Bridge. Y'all know the original London Bridge is in Lake Havasu City, Arizona now, right? They bought it and numbered the stones, dismantled it, shipped it over, and put it back together. It's really pretty. Anyhow, that was our number one. And we went through, we did White Sands National Park and Saguaro National Park on our way home, and Roswell. And then our second road trip, we went the other way. We drove to Key West, all the way across the south and down and across all those bridges to Key West, and saw the southernmost point in the continental US. I don't figure how they figure it's continental since it's on an island, but oh well, it's connected by bridges. We saw, went up the lighthouse and saw Hemingway's house and his 6-toed cats and all kinds of things. We were making good time on the way home. And so as we cross into Louisiana, Lane says, want to go to New Orleans for lunch? So we dropped down to New Orleans and had an original muffaletta there on not Canal Street, the run right by the French Market, that street in St. Louis Square. Anyhow, we went down there for lunch and then came on home. And our last one was 2019. We barely made it. This one we had to make one reservation because we went for the Rose Parade. And of course, we knew we'd have to have a hotel reservation to be in the vicinity to make it to the parade on time. That was awesome. That had been something I wanted to do for years. You know how the parade started? Not on the ground. They did a flyover of the Blackbird stealth fighter. That thing was amazing.
Wow.
And then the parade and all the flowers, it was great. And then of course we continued and did Highway 1 and saw elephant seals and sea otters and we made it up to San Francisco and did Chinatown and the Golden Gate Bridge and the Embarcadero, the big wharf area there. And then we came back down so I could do the Guggenheim Art Museum in LA. Then we took off for the parks. Museums are my thing, parks are my brother's thing, but we shared time. We went to, you have to drive through from that direction. You drive through Kings Canyon National Park and then into Sequoia National Park. Park Lodge, which we didn't make a reservation for, but in January it was kind of empty, you know, but it was a beautiful lodge. Best lodging we had the whole trip, I think, was in Sequoia National Park.
Wow.
And
did you drive through the road that has that's cut through the middle of the tree?
We couldn't. That was in the north part of the park, which was closed due to weather. It was very icy when we were there, and we were at 7,000 feet where the lodge was. So in fact, we're going to hike out to certain things, and the trails were just too icy. We said, no, we're going to fall and break a leg if we don't watch it. And I mean, we had hiking boots and everything, but we didn't take chances. So we saw what we could without too much danger. And then we came on back, went down to Joshua Tree National Park, which is right off I-10. I mean, you know, the entrance is like 7 miles off of I-10. And what impressive, well, for one thing, there's one lookout in Joshua Tree that from up there, you can see the San Andreas Fault. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, it's really cool. The other thing that impressed me about it is there was no cell service, but they had Wi-Fi at their campground.
Wow.
I thought, oh, brother, you can't even go camping without a computer. But apparently young people can't. Anyhow, so let's see. I guess that's about all we managed to work into that one before we both had to go back to work.
Now, you mentioned Hemingway and the Florida Keys. By any chance, did you get to see Hemingway's boat that has been reconstructed and put back together?
Did not see his boat.
You know where his boat is?
Cats.
Do you know where his boat is today?
No.
It's inside Dick's Sporting Goods.
I'll be doggone. No,
really? We shopping. Stairs going up. I mean, it's a big, big store, but I was just so impressed that they have Hemingway's boat in there.
Yeah, that's amazing. If I'd known it was there, I'd have gone in.
It might not have been there, you know, in years. Yeah. But that's where it is now. Now, tell us about your day trips around Texas that you've taken.
Okay. One thing that's a good thing to do is to go up, of course, to Schulenburg. They've got a lot of little museums in Schulenburg. Like there's one flight museum about early aircraft and in Texas. And LaGrange has an interesting little quilt museum, if you're into that. Mm-hmm. The Woodlands
It's expensive to go into.
Which one?
The quilt museum.
In LaGrange?
In LaGrange.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah.
We went with a group. And because my sister worked for Klein ISD for a while, and they had a group that did little job outings in the summer, and we went with that group. And so, you know, ours was arranged already, so I didn't know how much it cost, but the quilts were amazing. I mean, if you walked in the street and didn't look closely, you'd think some of them were paintings. They were so realistic, and just, you know, elaborate, embroidered as well as the quilting, and it was amazing. And then the Woodlands has 2 separate tours, little bus tours that they take you, showing their outdoor sculptures that decorate the whole area. And they have so many of them, they can't do them on a single tour. And so that's interesting. And of course, Houston's museum district. I'm a member of Fine Arts, love art. But if you're like into history, there's a Buffalo Soldiers Museum and a Holocaust Museum and all kinds of little museums right there in a 10-block area. It's just a really great cultural district. A couple of good restaurants too.
Do you know if the Woodlands tour is still going on?
I don't know. That's been several years ago, but I would imagine it might be.
I would like to read that.
I'm sure there must be some sort of a office that you call that in the Woodlands area that tells you about the little boat rides on their waterway, and of course they rent paddle boards there and that kind of thing, that tells you about all the activities there are to do there. So I would imagine they still are. Well, I don't know. If they were popular, they still are.
Sounds like a good day trip. Didn't you make a number of trips up around the Fredericksburg area also?
Yeah, I love Fredericksburg, but I thought that would probably I couldn't do Fredericksburg in a day, okay?
Yeah.
I'd have to spend the night. But yeah, there's lots up there. There's a wonderful wildflower farm right outside of Fredericksburg where they take you in a golf cart and show you all their native plants. Of course, you can buy the seeds for these native plants to take home with you. And there's the Tapatio Golf Resort, which was our reason for the area, but the men played golf, the women played. we toured, we found what there was to do, and there was plenty, lots of wine tasting rooms and good restaurants in Fredericksburg. And right outside of Fredericksburg, I didn't get to go to it, but there's an artist, Nini, who has bought a ranch out there, and he has a bunch of outdoor sculptures too, but he's far back off the road. But as I understand it, it's free if you have time to drive back in there and see his works. And he's also a painter. My son met him once, and he used to be based in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and they liked to camp and canoe up there. And they met Benini, but then Benini moved to Texas. So, but I've been meaning to do that, but haven't made it yet. And you know what? One thing, don't forget, go to your local historical museum. I volunteer at our Alvin Historical Museum, and we have, believe it or not, groups come in from out of town once in a while, and they always say, for a small town museum, it's really well done. And I know Angleton has one, historic homes in the area, and I know there's several down in the Angleton area. And so don't neglect what's right in your own backyard too.
Have you been to the Manuscript Museum yet?
I have, and it's interesting. Maybe I shouldn't say it. The guy that runs it talks too much. You don't get to look because he's busy telling you about all of it.
Where is that?
Oh, it's cool. It's on Johnson Street. It was originally the Methodist church, the first Methodist church. And then when the Methodists built a bigger church down on South Street, it was a Mormon church for a while. Then they built another building, and it sat vacant for a number of years. And the Carpels bought it and converted it, and it took them a good 8 or 10 years to get the building renovated, because of course it wasn't to code and it had mold issues, and they had to do a lot of remediation on it. But now it is open, and I think, and unfortunately it opened, right before the pandemic, so it didn't get to have a grand opening, but I think it'll be a wonderful resource for the schools.
Oh, that church has so many steps going up. I want to say 18 steps. It's built up really, really high. So
it is.
A big problem for them was they needed to be handicap accessible.
And they are. And they built a huge ramp that goes back and forth up the back side of the building, and there's an entrance that way. So, in fact, that's when I knew it was really going to happen, because first they said, oh, this is too much trouble, we're not going to do it. And then when they started building that ramp, oh, it's going to happen. So,
what kind of manuscripts do they have?
It's very, very eclectic. I do have to say, though, that most of what is actually on display right now are facsimiles. Photographic copies of the things, but it gives the history of them. They have a lot referring to Texas history, but and then they have random ones from other eras of history too, just, in case local history is not your thing. It's really, really interesting. And you know what? Nothing will awake your appreciation of history more than travel, because you understand so much more about what you're seeing and what's there if you know the history of the area.
Yeah.
Helps with imprinting your memory when you're actually in those places also. Now, Janice, would you tell us about your involvement with Gathering Place?
Well, my mother died of Alzheimer's. And so when I heard about the Gathering Place and what its mission was, I said, I need to do this for Mom. Because back when she was diagnosed with it, which would have been in the late 80s, not nearly as much was known. I mean, that's 40 years ago, she's been gone for 20 years. So there was not that much known about Alzheimer's. It was, it was a death sentence, a slow death sentence back then, and nobody even tried to do anything about it. And I thought, no. And I have learned so much. And I know now that we did everything wrong, but it was because we didn't know what to do.
Right.
So that's why I got involved in this in memory of Mama.
I understand you're also a lifestyle coach.
Yeah, early stage coach. Have we changed the name of it, Brenda?
No, it's early stage coaches.
Yeah. But every time I hear that, I think stagecoach, like being pulled by horses. But actually, it's kind of like that. You have to be the horse and pull them along. But yeah, it's for people first diagnosed, and the mental. And the thing is, it requires a real commitment on the part of the person and their spouse or caregiver, because it's very intensive. It requires a commitment of several hours every day doing mental exercises, and physical exercise is important, and staying socialized. And it's a very intensive program, but it can stall the progress if you give it a chance. Of course, that kind of got shut down by the pandemic because, of course, meeting with your coach was a face-to-face thing. And we had to give them materials and look at the materials they had done and that kind of thing. I know that stuff can be done online now, but not by me.
You're doing a great job with being online in this pandemic, so we sure appreciate you doing that. Were you involved with other ministries also before the pandemic?
Well, ministries. Well, I've been a member of a church choir, one or another, in various states ever since I was in 5th grade. I love to sing. Mama majored in music. And so we, grew up knowing songs. And, I knew Beethoven before I knew it was Beethoven. I just knew I loved that music because Mama would play it on the piano. But anyhow, so I love singing. I sing in my church choir, which we are active with these masks that look like beaks. It's supposed to be the safest way you can sing. And we sit, at opposite ends of the pews up on the chancel. And I was a member of it's not exactly a ministry, but the Alvin Community College has a community chorus, and I was a member of that too. We are not active at the moment, and I miss it. I really miss it. I am been in Altar Guild at my church for probably 45 years, and I'm directress now of it, and that's quite a commitment of time. People have no idea unless they've ever done the behind the scenes stuff.
Now, Janice, we are just about out of time, but would you tell us about your new addition to your household?
Okay, well, number one, he's not here anymore, but my dad came to me. My father is 101 years old.
Oh my goodness.
And on January 30th, he fell outside because he didn't bother to take a cane. And he fractured his femur, and he had to have surgery to have a rod put in his leg. He lives in Lufkin, and he had that done up there. This was like a week before the big freeze. So after he had his surgery, he came to a rehab facility in the Woodlands because that's nearer to my sister. And then came the big freeze. Well, the big freeze hit Lufkin hard. And when it was time for Dad to be discharged, Lufkin, or at least his end of Lufkin, had no power and no water. He could not go home. And I'm the sibling who has a downstairs bedroom. So Dad came to my house, and he was here with us for 12 days and right out of the rehab hospital. But we had, probably 3 or 4 visits a week from in-home rehab people, and they did a really good job with him. He's still not back to being independent, so we're now taking turns. Somebody staying 24/7 with him. He has a caregiver who's come, 4 hours a day for years, but she can't be there 24/7 because she takes care of her own mom. So, and we knew he had to have someone there 24/7. So we're taking turns at that. My brother's there since since he was at my house. My brother went to Lufkin for that first shift. I may be going to relieve him next week So if you don't see me next week, it's because I'm in Lufkin. Why can't I do it from there? Because Dad has no computer. Dad has no Wi-Fi. I'm a so Dad's the real thing.
Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Janice. It's so interesting to hear about our instructors and their hobbies and some of their life.